Greetings. Welcome to Limitless Alchemy 808. I'm Patience. So, and something that's been happening me to a lot lately is, or happening for me, I should say a lot lately, is when I record videos, I keep clearing my throat, and I just feel that has a lot to do with the energy right now. I feel a lot of us are speechless, flabbergasted, and a lot of us are just unable to find the words that we want to truly express what we're feeling, what we're seeing. And I was watching a tarot reader the other night, and she kept clearing her throat all throughout the reading. And I just think that as confirmation of what I'm experiencing as well. So that's why I keep doing these videos. That's why I keep putting myself out there, because what I'm experiencing, many of you are experiencing as well. While the details may not be exact, the essence, the core, the bigger picture is reflecting. And so I just waiting for my pizza here, and thought I would record this segment of the video. And I recorded yesterday's, or a segment yesterday that plays after this, and I hope you enjoy. But anyways, I know you will, because you're here. So when it comes to sex, there's so much around that. And as I mentioned in a previous video, the universe really loves experiencing sex, and there's a lot to be said about the taboos and perversions around sex, but I'm not going to focus on that right now. What I am going to focus on is how we can acknowledge that creation, that creative energy is in the genitals, right? It is in the sacral chakra. And we create not only life, but we use that force to create what we want in our realities. A lot of times I've seen some videos about harnessing the power of your climax. I'll just call it that. The power of your climax, and focusing that energy into your manifestations. And that is it makes a lot of sense, because the way that old earth wants us to look, to view, to regard sex as something, sex in itself, taboo. I mean, in order to not teach children about their body parts, they give, weird little pet names. Like, I don't even want to go into it. But my point there is that to prevent children from being groomed. They should be aware of what their body parts are called, the actual terminology, and that no one is to touch them but themselves, right? I mean, as a parent, I've had to help my kids, like changing diapers especially. I mean, I've had to take care of them, right? Because they can't take care of themselves in that current moment. So, I mean, but that's never crossed my mind to do anything other than take care of them. So what I'm getting at there is that they know that they're the only ones that are supposed to touch them, and then they're caregivers in caregiving ways, not other ways, right? Okay, I hope that makes sense. I hope that comes across clearly. But the best way to help children be prevented from experiencing a lot of what a lot of us have experienced, we are empowering them. We are giving them the knowledge that they require to prevent themselves from going through something traumatic like that. And nothing is foolproof, but it's a start. It is a start. It's a stepping stone, right? And it also irks me because, you know, my youngest was referring to his genitals as his inappropriate place. And I was like, who said it's inappropriate? Like, where'd you get that no part of your body is inappropriate? It's just, you know, things that can be done with it are inappropriate in certain circumstances, but your body itself is not inappropriate. And that is just more evidence of, you know, patriarchal religious indoctrination, old earth thought forms and modalities, that we should be ashamed of our bodies, that we should be ashamed of what our body can do, the power that our body has. And it just also, I mean, I'm not saying, like, I am not about to take my kids to, like, hot springs, because that is part of grooming children, taking them to hot springs where people will most likely be nude. And I'll take them to hot springs, but to resorts where everyone has bathing suits on. I mean, okay, so call me modest, and that's part of religious indoctrination, but honestly, if we didn't wear clothes, I wouldn't have a job. So I mean, it's like, within reason, all of these different things that I'm talking about seem reasonable to me, and they may seem unreasonable to others, because I've driven a lot of wedges between myself and others because of my views and beliefs, and a lot of them don't align with, you know, the norm or time-tested, if you will, thought forms. But, you know, as a libertarian, I feel that if we decriminalize sex work, that will give so many people the power to take control of their lives and truly create for themselves what they want to create. There are many of us who are forced into, that sort of situation, and that's not what I'm referring to. Those of us that choose of their own volition to do, the oldest line of work in human history, then they should be able to do it without fear of stigma, without fear of societal disdain, because therein that is still the puritanical lobbying that has shaped a lot of what we are experiencing right now. A lot of what a lot of us are working to change, because we're not those people. We're evolved. We are evolving. And we know, it's just, I feel a lot of, the more you tell humans not to do something, the more they want to do it. The more they feel the urge to rebel. But once you tell them, hey, yeah, do whatever you want, I don't care. Some of us will, but a lot of us won't. Because you're taking away that whole, just fire starter comes to mind, and that whole fire starter mentality where, and just segueing into drugs here, like, I've read that on a video about cannabis, that in India, cannabis is highly associated with Lord Shiva, because cannabis is the gateway to higher consciousness, which is true for many, many, many of us. I mean, I've met a couple of folk who can't vibe with cannabis, and that's all well and good. That's just part of their physiology. But they will prepare cannabis for special celebrations regarding Lord Shiva. They prepare it with milk, I believe, in a drink, and then I think there's a certain celebration where they're like burn bundles of it as incense, and it's the bridge between human and divine consciousness. And honestly, I, use cannabis, but responsibly, of course. I don't use around my kids or anything like that. But I find from time to time, if I overuse cannabis, it gives me anxiety. And I've read somewhere that people who are already born with a higher level of consciousness, or people who are prone to evolving their consciousness so quickly, when you're utilizing external tools like cannabis to raise your consciousness even more, it can do the opposite. It can go too high. You can be too high. And that just brings to mind something that Hunter S. Thompson said, was that he never advocated the use of drugs or alcohol or substances, but they always seem to work for him. And that, that's from his perspective. I mean, a lot of us can give our opinion on how they worked for him. But I know what he means, what he meant, and I agree. I agree with that statement. But the thing about drugs is that they can easily become vices, right? And we all have vices. But it's like, when they control you, then that's where you slip into addiction, right? You slip into complete and utter surrender. You cease to be a human and you become a drug. And as someone who has legal access to meth-based medications, but I refuse to take those medications, it's like, again, to each their own, right? When we use drugs as coping mechanisms, that's when they turn into demons. When we use drugs to just have fun, to just, again, commune with or raise consciousness or commune with the collective oversoul, right? Source, God, Shiva, Buddha, any of them. Then it becomes more intentional. I can definitely say that since I've evolved so much in the past year, well, almost a year, cannabis definitely affects me differently. I don't quite get as high. I mean, it depends. Like, when it's a dab, yeah, that's definitely going to alter your mind state. But just having some flower, as I normally do, it's different every time. Like, sometimes I'm like, did I actually smoke? Okay, I don't know. Yes, I did. I remember smoking, but do I feel it? Not really. And then there'll be times where I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I'm lifted. But I mean, I would like to try LSD at least once, just have some. Why not? Couldn't do any harm. You can't get addicted to LSD. But I mean, in any drug that they say that's addictive, it's not the drug itself, literally. Even like cigarettes, all that. It's not the drug itself that's addictive. It's the action. It's how it's making you feel in that moment. Like, and so you're constantly chasing that. You're constantly chasing that feeling because it's comforting. But once you address your shadows, once that you take a hard look at yourself and all the experiences you've been through, your triggers, I guess you could call them, thank you, universe. You just get a different perspective on everything. I mean, I was highly addicted to coffee as well for a while. Just the act of coffee. The smell, the warmth, the brewing, the darkness of coffee. I love black coffee. And have been finding myself drinking a lot of iced coffee lately, but in any case, like, I've definitely reduced the amount of coffee that I drink. and replaced it with water. And I mean, I don't miss it. I don't miss coffee, right? I still have it. I'll have it every day. I mean, with ADHD, it helps, but I definitely don't drink as much as I used to. I used to like drink half of a pot a day, and maybe more. But now it's like maybe a couple cups. But yeah, that's also one thing about rebellion, is that I saw in a comment on that video about Lord Shiva and cannabis, and one person commented that they smoke because of rebellion to the system. And I'm all for it. We're in revolution right now. But if the system said, you know, this whole war on drugs crap, if the system said that all drugs are legal, I mean, we have Portland as a litmus test for all of this. I mean, but that, like I said, it all depends on the physiology. So just because what's happening in Portland doesn't mean that's what's going to happen everywhere. And it could, you know, the possibilities are endless. But we should still, like, who's the parent, who's the child here? Like, who's to say you can tell grown people what to do with their lives? Yes, structure and order are good for humans. It provides predictability and comfort, right? But there has to be a limit. Like, you have to be able to have the opportunity to make the choice for yourself. No one should make the choice for you. Communicate, talk about it, you know. Communication is key with everything. But if we were to legalize all drugs, you would see the government collapse because of how much it is funded by the so-called war on drugs, where in actuality it's all organized crime. We're aware of it, but we're moving out of that. So that's why I'm like, okay, so if everything is just legal, those that are gonna do it are gonna do it, and those that are not gonna do it are not gonna do it. Because it's like, not trying to be a narcissist or anything, but it's like, I choose not to do meth. Whereas I know someone who heavily relies on it to cope with their past. And I've sort of lost that person who's quite dear to me. There's nothing really I can do about it, except hold my boundaries. And something that I can say is that, you know, using drugs to elevate consciousness, to reach that point where you are in, I mean, you can do it all on your own. You don't need drugs. You can do it all on your own. It's all within you, the power. But if you choose that permission slip, if you choose that path to reach, you know, a point of enlightenment, I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Because I can definitely say, I mean, I did mushrooms when I was 20 with my best friend and our other roommate. And I don't feel that maybe I ingested enough, because we kind of just went for a walk, and perhaps I did. I mean, I ingested enough to where it gave me that body euphoria, and we walked around and it was quite nice. And then I didn't do mushrooms again for like 19 years. Yeah, it was like almost a year ago that I did mushrooms again, and this time I ingested quite a substantial amount, and that is when I received the downloads that confirmed all the reoccurring dreams and broken childhood memories that I was having about my abuse. And it's not quite funny, but it's so funny because when I had confronted my mother about my abuse, and I had just finished telling her that, you know, I cut back on cannabis, and I had at the time even I was already cutting back on it. And when I confronted her about my abuse, she's like, "Are you on drugs?" And I was just like, "This is the second time you've called me a drug addict. The first time was because she didn't want to help me pay for my wedding dress, and she said, basically insinuated that I was a heroin addict. I don't even like needles, dude. Like, I can't even find my veins. When I go to get blood drawn, it's an ordeal. But anyway, I mean, you could smoke it, but like, it's that also, to be depressed like that, to be so tired, sleepy, like that also doesn't appeal to me. But that's just like another thing, like when people don't want to address something, just write it off as, oh, you're a drug addict, oh, you're this or you're that. And I wanted to microdose shrooms for a while, but I looked it up, and if you have children that you should take care of, you know, you need to take care of, they advise against microdosing. So that's all well and good. I mean, in due time. But I do macrodose. Like I'll schedule it when my kids are with their dad, of course, and just go off and venture. And it's been nice experiences each time. I'm looking forward to the next one coming up. But everyone's like, oh, you have psychotic breaks and this and that. If I was gonna have a psychotic break, I'd have it already. I mean, like I said, my friend, first time he smoked weed, he had a psychotic break. It was quite terrifying. I was 19 years old up in the Azusa Canyons, which if you know about Azusa Canyons, then you know. And my best friend was also there, and it was his car he was driving, and my friend from high school was sitting in the front seat, and I was sitting behind him, and he took one hit, and he just like turned into a totally different person. He just started raging and wanting to tear off his flesh. I mean, it was just, and this is like back in the early 20-aughts, where it was just stress. It was just stress weed. There wasn't anything special. Like, chronic back then was $70 an eighth, okay? And it probably depended on who your weed person was. Like, they were ripping you off or something, but it was just stress weed. That's all it was. And he flipped his lid. So, you know, I see that my pizza's ready, so I'm just gonna close this out. But it's like, the big reason why people turn to coping mechanisms is because they're not willing to do the work, and that's fine. Each in their own time. But yeah, I'll see you in the next segment. Love ya. I'm sitting in front of a historic chapel in a neighboring town to where I was born, and I've been thinking a lot lately about sharing my experiences with religion and how I've processed everything, and it's kind of mirroring what you're also going through. And I mean, I was baptized Catholic as a baby because my dad's family, and but my parents divorced when I was about a year old, and my mother, she was never really one to go to church. I mean, she's self-proclaimed Christian spiritualist, and I also identified in that manner for a long time. And don't get me wrong, I love a show. A show is within us, and I've also read that a show has also come back, and I'm so excited because the new earth is here, so of course a show is coming back. But I've also read that a show is a woman in this reincarnation, and I'm just, of course, I mean, it's Women's History Month, so yay. But it was never really, religion was never really, I would say, made a big deal as a kid. And when I lived in Joshua Tree, when I was about 5th grade, I would say 5th or 6th grade, I started going to different churches out there. Not that there were many to choose from, but the ones that they had, I went to, and I would go for like a weekend service, a Sunday service or two, and then never go back, or like go to one of their kids events. And I would go by myself. I would just walk off and go into wherever I was at. And it's kind of, now that I think about it and I look back, they never really questioned why I was there by myself. I don't even recall them asking where my parents were. And but being in those spaces, I understood their messages and I understood their reasoning, but it just never truly resonated with me, never truly aligned with what I was feeling, what I am feeling, because religion preaches separation, right? Religion preaches that God is outside you, the universe is outside you, divinity is outside you. But that's just the old earth. That's just old earth modalities and thought forms that you're separate, you're human having a soul experience, whereas you're actually a soul having a human experience. You're an iteration of Source experiencing itself in a 3D projection. And when I, moved with my dad, my grandparents would insist that I go to church with them during the summer because my dad would be at work and they didn't want me home alone. And they went every morning. Every morning. And then I think I did about a week of that. And I complained so much to my dad that he convinced them to leave me home alone. Because it didn't make sense to me that they were worried about me being alone, because I've always been alone. I've always been on my own, and pretty sure I'll be alone for the rest of my life. But you know, we're never truly alone, because we have our connection to Source. We have our connection to others through Source and through the universe, all of that, you know, whatever you align with. We have that comfort in knowing that we're never truly alone, although then again we are alone, because the universe is itself and there's nothing else but the universe. So that's pretty much why it loves to split itself off into these different iterations. It's just distracting itself from its loneliness. And that's fine. That's all well and good, you know. It is what it is until it isn't anymore. But I would go with my grandmother sometimes on first Fridays of the month, because that is when Catholics believe that the Eucharist, the wafer given at communion, truly embodies the spirit of Jesus of a show. And, you know, I would just be there looking at the Stations of the Cross and all the statues of saints and Mary and everything, and just think, well, this doesn't really seem anything different than Greek mythology. And that's pretty much what I fed myself as a child, reading a bunch of books. I read a lot of Greek myths, and my favorite god is Hades. But, you know, I feel that, you know, and then doing my DNA testing, I found out I am some heritage from the Balkans. So I feel that that is something that called to me as a child, and I was unaware that I even had such a connection to it. So I truly appreciate the universe for guiding that into my life, because it gave me a different perspective when I came in contact with Christian, Judeo-Christian centric religions, organizations, you know. And with everything that is structured within the old earth, it's centered around, you know, Judeo-Christian religions and anything that is heavily male-focused, masculine-focused, is the patriarchy, and literally just wants to keep others subjugated, especially women and femmes, and even other masculines who they deem not masculine enough. And it's so great having the knowing that there's so much more to what we're fed and what we're led to believe from childhood, And even as a libertarian, I believe that we all have religious freedom, religious practice, as long as we're not abusing and neglecting our kids. But I mean, if you've ever seen 8 Passengers YouTube channel, then it's an extreme form of indoctrination, but it exists, right? So I am grateful. Oh, there's a face in that window over there. Kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln. Interesting. Anyway, I am grateful that I did have the time away from my dad's family to gain the perspectives that I had once I went to live with them. And even astrology is something that I knew of, but I didn't really give too much attention to. Like, I feel astrology is great because it helps to define certain aspects of personalities of everyone. But I know my birth chart, and I'll reference it from time to time. But when it comes to like astrocartography and everything, and I just feel that wherever you feel like home, that's where you should be. And if you've been going all over and you still seem like you can't find home, then go back. Go back to the place where you first felt like home. And that's where you're going to find your happiness, truly. And it may even be somewhere that you think you've never been before, but once you're there, you'll know. But that also has a lot to do with how laws in the US have been structured. Granted that the founding fathers did not establish any national language or religion. A lot of puritanical lobbying created the rules and bounds that we exist in this society currently. And I was just watching about Sudan last night and everything that's going on, and I've been aware since I was a child about all the horrors that people in, I believe is it East Africa, right? In East Africa especially, I mean South Africa too, but in East Africa, where they're having so many civil wars, and just at the expense of everyone. And even what happened with Palestine recently, and what's going on with Ukraine right now, or has been going on with Ukraine. I mean, it's just enough is enough. And it's like, what's being done? Hi. What's being done? What can we do? And it's something I'm definitely pondering on. Something I'm definitely talking with the universe about. But in libertarianism, and a lot of people have issues with libertarianism because they believe it's created by corporations and capitalists. I mean, there's a lot of things that the current presidential administration is doing that aligns with some libertarian ideologies. But I'm of the mind where if none of us are free, if all of us aren't free, then none of us aren't free. So that includes everyone all around the world. Because we're all one, we're all together. But there's just so many of us who believe in the separation and want to perpetuate it. But I know that we're transitioning out of that. We're evolving at such an exponential rate. And I'm just so grateful to be here, to share these experiences, make these connections, and have you all trust me. And I mean, when I say every way is the right way, I'm referring to people who love themselves, aren't hard on themselves, but don't do harm to others, don't take advantage of others, don't use others as stepping stones in the sense of material gain. I mean, we're all stepping stones for each other in what we can impart to one another. But just for material gain, to not use others.